The CEO had chosen the park because no one looked for power there. No boardrooms. No assistants. Just a quiet bench and the heavy silence of a man who had everything except peace. "You look exactly like my dad's painting." The words cut through his thoughts. He looked up to see a little girl, maybe 8, clutching a worn sketchbook, her eyes wide with certainty. He almost smiled, until she opened the book. Inside was a charcoal portrait of a man sitting on a bench, head slightly bowed. It was him. Down to the scar near his eyebrow. "That's impossible," he whispered. "My dad painted it before he disappeared," she said simply. "Mom says he paints people he believes need to be found." Something inside the CEO cracked. Years ago, before money and mergers, he had been a struggling artist who walked away from his family after a brutal failure, convinced they'd be better without him. He never knew his paintings had been left behind, or that a child had grown up believing in them. They sat together as the girl spoke, about her sick mother, about how her dad used to say kindness was the only legacy that mattered. The CEO listened, not as a powerful man, but as someone being quietly forgiven. The next day, the girl's mother received full medical care, anonymous, no strings attached. Weeks later, a new art center opened in the neighborhood, dedicated to artists who disappear but still matter. On opening day, the CEO returned to the park. The girl ran to him, smiling. "My dad would be proud of you," she said. For the first time in decades, the man believed that might be true. Sometimes, kindness doesn't just change lives, it brings lost souls home. The CEO tried to return to his old life, but the park followed him everywhere. Board meetings blurred. Numbers lost meaning. All he could see was that charcoal portrait, the quiet sadness he had once painted without realizing it was his own goodbye. He hadn't signed his art back then. He hadn't believed it deserved a name, or a future. 3 days later, he went back to the neighborhood arts center. It was still under construction, dust hanging in the air like unfinished thoughts. On a temporary wall, someone had pinned children's drawings. Crayon sons. Stick figure families. And one careful sketch of a man sitting on a park bench. "You came," a familiar voice said. The girl stood there again, holding her sketchbook tighter this time. Her smile was hopeful, but guarded, as if she'd learned early not to expect too much from adults. "I wanted to say thank you," the CEO replied, "for reminding me of who I was." She tilted her head. "My dad said people forget themselves when they stop helping." The words landed deeper than any criticism he'd ever received. He asked about her father again, and this time she spoke longer, about nights waiting by the window, about a man who painted strangers because he believed everyone carried a hidden story worth saving. That evening, the CEO did something he hadn't done in 20 years. He picked up a pencil. His hands trembled at first, but slowly, lines formed. Not contracts. Not signatures. A face. A small girl with brave eyes. When he finished, he felt lighter, almost afraid of it. The next week, he funded free art programs, not just buildings. Mentors. Supplies. Time. But he stayed anonymous, choosing instead to teach one class himself, every Saturday morning. The girl watched him from the doorway one day and whispered to her mother, "He draws like Dad." And for the first time, the CEO realized something unexpected. Helping others wasn't paying for his past. It was healing it. The class fell silent when the CEO entered with a large, wrapped canvas under his arm. He hadn't slept the night before. Some truths take decades to find the courage to speak, and even then, they shake in your hands. The children gathered closer as he placed the painting on an easel at the front of the room. "This," he said quietly, "is the last piece I painted before I stopped believing in myself." He removed the cloth. It was a young woman holding a child by the hand, standing beneath a fading streetlight, unfinished, but full of hope. The girl gasped. Her mother froze, one hand covering her mouth. "I know this painting," the woman whispered. "My husband never finished it. He said it was waiting for the right moment." The room seemed to stop breathing. The CEO swallowed hard. I was afraid. Afraid I couldn't provide. Afraid my dreams made me selfish. So I left, thinking love would survive my absence. Tears rolled down the woman's face, not from anger, but from years of unanswered questions. The little girl stepped forward and placed her small hand in his. You didn't disappear, she said softly. You just got lost. In that moment, no title mattered. No fortune. Just a family standing in the space between regret and forgiveness. The CO signed the painting for the first time. His real name. Not the one printed on skyscrapers, but the one he'd abandoned when he chose fear over faith. The children applauded without fully understanding why, but they felt it. That night, the painting stayed on the wall of the art center, with a small plaque beneath it. Lost does not mean gone. And for the first time, the man believed his life could be more than a comeback. It could be a reunion. The CEO no longer sat in the back of the room during art class. He sat on the floor. The children didn't see a powerful man. They saw someone who listened when their crayons broke, who laughed when paint spilled, who stayed late to clean without being asked. Slowly, something fragile began to grow: trust. One afternoon, the girl's mother approached him while the children painted quietly. She never stopped believing he'd come back, she said. I just didn't know if I could survive hoping. I don't expect forgiveness, he replied honestly. I just want to be present. Presence, he learned, was harder than money. It meant hearing the unsaid. It meant staying when guilt whispered that leaving would be easier. Weeks passed. The mother's health improved. The art center became a refuge, not just for children, but for adults who had once buried their dreams. The CEO funded counselors, meals, and community nights, but he never put his name on anything. One evening, the girl tugged his sleeve. Will you come to my school art show? He hesitated. Crowds still frightened him, not because of fame, but because they reminded him of who he'd pretended to be. Then he nodded. At the show, her painting hung in the center, a man and a girl sitting on a park bench, sunlight breaking through the trees. At the bottom, written in careful letters, were the words, People come back when love leaves the light on. He felt his chest tighten. Applause filled the room, but it was the girl's quiet smile that undid him. That night, as they walked home together, he realized forgiveness wasn't a moment. It was a practice. A daily choice to stay, to show up, to be gentle with what was broken. And for the first time, the future didn't scare him. It invited him. The park looked the same, but the man was not. The CEO, now simply a father again, sat on the familiar bench as autumn leaves drifted down like quiet blessings. Beside him, the girl sketched, her feet swinging, her confidence steady. Do you remember this place? She asked. He smiled. It's where I was found. She finished her drawing and handed it to him. It showed a man, a woman, and a child standing in front of an art center, sunlight pouring through open doors. At the bottom, she had written, Home is where you choose to stay. The art center had grown into a movement, free programs across cities, mentorship for struggling artists, and safe spaces for families rebuilding their lives. Still, the man avoided speeches. Instead, he spent his mornings teaching and his evenings listening. One day, a journalist asked him why he had given so much without asking for recognition. He answered simply, Because kindness isn't an investment. It's a responsibility. That quote spread faster than his name ever had. On the anniversary of the art center's opening, the girl stood on a small stage and spoke into the microphone, her voice calm and brave. My dad taught me that art helps people see each other. When he left, I thought the painting lied. But it didn't. It was just early. The crowd rose in applause. The man felt tears, but they were light this time. As the sun dipped behind the trees, they returned to the park bench, no longer a place of loneliness, but of beginnings. Some lives are rebuilt with money. Others are rebuilt with presence, patience, and the courage to come back. And sometimes, all it takes to change everything is a child who recognizes you before you remember yourself.